Hey everyone, Joe here. Me, Tom, and Nate are all going to be live May 29th in London at the Rich Mix. So get your tickets and come down and see us. It's going to be a great show. We're going to have some new merch, some shirts, some pins, maybe some book stuff because it coincides with the launch of my book, The Highlands Burn. And if you can't make it, that's okay. We're going to be live streaming it. Check out our show notes. Make sure you click on the right link for live show and live stream tickets, whichever one you need, and get your tickets now. The Highlands Burn, my debut fantasy novel, releases May 29th and is now available for digital pre-order. You can find the link in the show notes wherever it is you're listening to this. Just like this show, this book is a completely independent production. To the crack of rifles and the acrid stench of sorcery, a sudden invasion sweeps through the highlands of the Confederation, and Syed's peaceful village life breaks with the dawn. A sole survivor amid the smoking ruins of all that he held dear, Syed must make a choice. Is pursuing revenge against the mercenaries that took everything from him worth becoming one himself? As escape pushes him to the gruff embrace of the Foundling Brigade, he must learn to tread a path between his need to understand why his people were targeted for destruction and the new responsibilities of his soldier's life, even as each new encounter with the horrors of battle force him to confront the terrible cost of his oath. Before long, the shifting fog of war casts old certainties into a haze of doubt, while the stuff of legend seems as clear as day, and Syed finds himself drawn into a much larger conflict than he could possibly imagine. Hello and welcome to the Lions Led by Donkeys podcast. I'm Joe, and with me, trapped inside this cave of farts, Tom, Nate, fellas, how you doing? How's the devil juice? I brewed it just for you.
Speaking of being stuck in a cave, the other day I had more plasterboard delivered for the studio, and there's no elevator. You have to bring, and these sheets weigh 30 kilos each, you have to bring them up 3 flights of stairs. And I brought a couple of sheets up and was coming down, and I had someone helping me, and I just kind of looked over, and there's this big gate that just there's a bit of wasteland behind it, and I looked over and there's just a crackhead on the ground halfway out up to his waist and is pushing himself through via the doors, and he just kind of whips his head and looks at me and I just kind of nod at him and he nods back, and I'm like, all right, it's grand, because earlier there was a bike and a Primark bag and half a duvet, and it kind of smelled like ass, and I was like, okay, there's probably someone around here. They're definitely not going to steal these boards because they weigh too much, so whatever, grand. Brought the sheet up, came back down. He'd gotten out from the wasteland. He'd crawled, given birth to himself. Another sheet up, and then we come back down, and I just kind of all right, chief, whatever. He's on his knees, and he had stolen his bike and is spray painting it completely black in view of everyone.
Was it one of the ubiquitous London stolen Lime bike that click because they broke that thing off in them?
No, it was obviously someone's mountain bike or something that he was after stealing. And I was I knew the bike was stolen because I just spotted a bolt cutters in the bag. I was I'm not going to move this. Whoever stole this is nearby.
Nice.
I one time had a delivery that the delivery person just put it right outside of the Trash Future studio, and it was a spool of
I remember this.
Of Cat 6A cable, and it was the crackheads got into it and then realized they're this has no use to me. This is just really, really annoying cable, and left alone, thank God.
You guys want to do meth and start a podcast?
Yeah. I mean, I did see this thing recently where someone's people keep asking, there's a series of photos of fucked up old car park with the grass growing in between the segments, and row houses all boarded up and just fucked up abandoned looking Tesco and all this shit, and people are just everyone's what is this vibe? Is this rewilding apocalypse core? And someone's no, it's just literally England.
And if you want to experience vibes like that, come to our live show on May 29th in Rich Mix in London.
Yeah, it's in Shoreditch, but you never have to travel far to find that the vibe you're going for.
Yeah, I mean, just go down to the new entrance to Old Street Station around midnight and you get to experience that.
Hell yeah. I'm glad that the guy next to your studio was training to crawl through the tunnels of Iwo Jima, because we are on part 3.
He was doing urban spelunking.
Yeah. He was spelunking your studio to a permanent end. As we're on part 3 of our series here on the Battle of Iwo Jima, the conclusion. We left you last time. Mount Suribachi was conquered on February 23rd. A very confusing flag-raising situation happened, and even after talking about it for about 30 minutes, it still really doesn't make a ton of sense to anybody. But to continue our story here on part 3, we have to go back in time a couple of days. I didn't want to get off the Suribachi train once it left the station, because I know it was like the story everybody was looking forward to. But by February 21st, the beaches had all been cleared, mostly. Tens of thousands of Marines were now ashore, and the naval logistical machine was really spinning into high gear. The beaches had been turned into a fully functioning port, and Mother Nature also happened to lend something of a hand by having the waves calm down a bit to make the whole thing that much easier. That didn't stop them from occasionally getting plastered with artillery or mortars, though, but shit exploding rarely slowed down the logistical pipeline. But that was another fixture of the battle, and we talked about it for about a split second last time. And that was, remember, this is a really small island, 8 square miles, and it's now packed with around 100,000 people, making it one of the most densely populated killing fields humans have ever created. Both sides also happen to have weapons that could reach anywhere within that range. So nowhere was safe and nowhere was really the rear. Marines working on the beach or doing their jobs at rear command posts were just as likely to get smashed with artillery as some dude pressing the attack. There were also tons of landmines everywhere and nobody knew where they were. Men in areas they thought were secure found themselves losing legs or, getting destroyed in exploding trucks as they tried to go about doing their job. This added to just the general misery of the fighting on the island. The volcanic ash got in everything, from equipment to food to drinking water. Men's eyes crusted over with the stuff, and as the Marines tried to dig deeper, trying to find like a more secure layer where they could have bunkers or fighting positions, they would accidentally breach sulfur vents, bathing them in horrible, hot, geological fart gas. That smell mixed with the stench of thousands of rotting dead bodies. And if that wasn't bad enough, it began to rain and turned everything into a black slurry. So we have yet a new kind of goo for the second episode in a row.
The fart joker's like, it smells normal to me.
Why so gassy? So fucking stupid.
God damn it. Yeah, to the Joker, this is a normal island, basically.
I'm the fart joker, baby.
I fucking hate you.
Damn it. There's probably somebody whose like granddad fought in World War II on Iwo Jima who's like, finally, they're going to give it the treatment it deserves. And we've instead been like, thinking of Jared Leto on Iwo Jima being the fart joker. Like, great. Good job, guys.
Despite the immense amount of work the U.S. was preparing for the incoming casualties of the battle, the meat grinder of Iwo Jima overwhelmed all of it immediately. From landing day and every day forward, they absorbed, at minimum, 1,000 casualties per day. Unable to cope with the transportation of so many dead bodies, engineers with bulldozers were put to work digging mass graves and then dumping in piles of dead Marines, while a Navy chaplain watched and just kind of gave a blessing in mass. Meanwhile, every single one of the 500 or so ships off the coast were working around the clock, all supporting the invasion in one way or another. The threat of Japanese air attack never really popped up. That was mostly due to bad weather and the Combined Operations Task Force 58, which was busy bombing the living shit out of any supporting airfields and other islands, as well as just about everything else back on the home islands. But it was only a matter of time before the most famous or infamous version of World War II Japanese air power made an appearance, the kamikazes. This is where things get a little hazy. According to some reports, Kuribayashi had received a couple kamikaze pilots as part of his reinforcements and deployed them. But Iwo Jima's airfields were pretty much unusable at this point. One had already been captured. Both had been bombed to piss. And the reports that he got kamikazes are probably true. He almost certainly never launched one from Iwo themselves, though. Imagine being the kamikaze crew sent to Iwo Jima, but then being grounded and forced to live in the cave. And you're like, maybe blowing up in my plane wasn't so bad after all. This sucks. On February 21st, a wave of kamikaze attackers appeared in the air above the American fleet, with most reports saying that they had come from the island of Honshu. As was always the case, the kamikaze pilots had been instructed to aim for aircraft carriers above all else. That was the most important thing that Japan wanted to destroy. And they had been trained to try to hit certain parts of the aircraft carrier. For example, the flight elevators. That way, planes and supplies can be moved around, or stacks, or the flight deck if all else failed, because it's important to remember, American flight decks were made out of wood back then, so they would catch fire. And I don't know why this is important to me, but the decks of the aircraft carriers are mostly made out of teak, which sounds nice, until they explode into flames anyway.
Very nice wood. Very appropriate. Stains quite well as well.
Tasteful.
Mm-hmm.
At around 5 p.m., that's what the kamikazes tried to do. A cloud of them flying as fast as they could to punch through the destroyer escorts that were parked around the aircraft carriers that were to act as their first line of defense, began shooting anti-aircraft fire at them. But the first wave of the kamikazes veered towards the aircraft carrier, the USS Saratoga. The first kamikaze hit several times by incoming fire, smashed into the carrier's hull, penetrating all the way to the hangar bay before exploding. A second kamikaze, already on fire, crashed into the water, skipped across the top of it like a particularly smooth stone, and then bounced off the armored belt of the carrier, doing absolutely nothing. The third was shot down, and a fourth scored a direct hit on the carrier's deck. But for whatever reason, the suicide bomb it was carrying didn't explode, and the wreckage cartwheeled off into the water. The fifth kamikaze, though, was the moneymaker. It slammed into the flight deck, cut straight through it, and blew up inside the ship, causing several other secondary explosions from its munitions hole. But that still wasn't the end of it. As the men ran out to the flight deck to try to put the fire out and do damage control, a sixth kamikaze crashed into a group of anti-aircraft batteries on the side of the ship, but it slammed into it going so fast that the suicide bomb that was in the plane broke free from the wreckage, flew right into the flight deck, and exploded amongst the work crew, vaporizing all the men that had just run there.
Oh.
And all of this happened in 3 minutes.
Oh, wow.
The Saratoga was on fire, and that is normally how a ship dies. The deck was burning, the aircraft on the deck were burning, fuel was on fire, there was fires both on top of and inside the ship. Everybody on board was put to the task of putting it out. The ship had holes in it and was flooding. Then that water is being pumped out, while still other water is being pumped across the burning wreckage on the deck. When possible to try to save from adding more water to the problem, crews pushed still burning wreckages of planes into the sea. But sometimes they couldn't, because then they would themselves get burned. Within an hour, though, the crew seemed to have saved the Saratoga, and they began pulling away. That's when the second wave of kamikazes appeared. They knew to gun for the wounded ship, and not to mention, it was quite literally like a glowing red barrel at this point. It was spewing smoke from all the fires. But at this point, everybody's already on edge, and the attackers are largely torn apart by anti-aircraft fire, all but one. And then it blows through, making another hole in its flight deck. The Saratoga did survive, but 123 men on board died, with another almost 200 wounded, and the ship was taken out of combat for a prolonged period of time. 20 minutes after this last attack on the Saratoga, another group of kamikazes gunned it for the USS Bismarck C. This aircraft carrier had somewhat ironically been used as a landing spot for several of the planes the Saratoga had, so they could be diverted in order to save the planes and the pilots. And now they're like, oh, fuck, it's happening again.
Yeah, and the captain of the ship just goes, You got what I need.
He did not finally have a friend, unfortunately.
No. Instead, he got a plane right in the face.
Most of the kamikazes were smacked out of the air, but one pilot managed to fight through this, get his plane to the surface of the water, flying so low that guns couldn't depress low enough to hit them, which is the main difference between me and a U.S. naval ship is my depression knows no bounds. This is from the U.S. Naval Institute article Iwo Jima, A Tale of Two Carriers. Quote, the kamikaze penetrated the hull and exploded in the hangar deck, cutting the cables of the aft elevator, which was lowering an aircraft. The aft magazine caught fire, and the aircraft elevator fell, slamming into the hangar bay with such force that bombs and torpedoes broke loose and rolled into the fires. Damage control teams attempted to tackle the blaze. The Bismarck Sea lost steering. Her glowing fires attracted a second kamikaze that crashed into the stern, exploding in the hangar bay amid the 4 fighters left full of fuel and killing most of the damage control men. 20 minutes after this, the captain of the Bismarck Sea gave the order to abandon ship. 318 sailors died, with another 608 having to be pulled from the sea over the course of the night.
Fucking hell.
And again, this all happens within 20 minutes. You can kind of understand that, well, yeah, kamikaze attacks were strategically a failure, of course, but like how terrifying this must be to be on a boat, specifically an aircraft carrier, since that's almost always what they targeted, and have these things rocketing towards you. Back on the island, at the line that cut through the battlefield, roughly splitting everything in half, the Marines had captured Airfield 1, and the engineers were busy trying to repair it into something that would be largely functional by the loose standards of the day, when pilots mostly just didn't give a shit about safety and were more than comfortable landing and taking off from the middle of a burning landfill if they had to. And all these pilots are operating on like a couple weeks of training, a cigarette, and a cup of coffee. They don't give a shit.
I respect it. I respect it so much.
The shit that these guys are able to pull off is just insane. Meanwhile, other Marines were trying to push into Airfield 2. And an airfield, by nature, is just about the worst place to attack on the ground. By just its existence, it has to be open and flat.
Yep.
And thanks to the Japanese citadel at Motoyama, which grew on the horizon behind the airfield, it meant that they could rain supporting fire down on the soldiers that were trying to attack it. And I mean, the bunkers at the airfield, we talked about this in episode 1, but like the bunkers on the airfield are by far the weakest positions on the whole island. They're in the open. They're not dug into the mountains. They're mostly made up of concrete and the remains of wrecked planes. It's the worst place to be a Japanese soldier on the island as so far as to fight from. And this flat ground was one of the few advantages the Marines had in the entire battle. The Japanese couldn't hide from the punishing naval gunfire and land-based artillery that had been brought to shore, not to mention the constantly raining airstrikes. Airfield 2 was hammered with strikes, and then Marines with tank support were sent in to capture it. And this is the only time in our entire series I'm going to say, this all went according to plan.
Okay.
This all worked. That's the only time I'm going to be saying that, though. That still left the mountainous citadel of Motoyama Plateau. And despite the Americans having advantages in everything, in some cases to absurd levels, like 10-1 artillery advantages and total air superiority, none of it mattered when it came to Motoyama. Kuribashi knew this, and he knew that it would all end this way. All of the bombardments, literally tons of explosives that had fired at his citadel, had effectively done nothing. I mean, like the concept of like the bunker buster and shit like that doesn't exist yet. Kind of. We are going to get to one accidentally being invented, though.
We're working on orc logic now?
Kind of. His tunnel network still stood. His artillery, still protected by dozens of feet of rock and steel blast doors, was still firing. His men, now they'd pretty much been dead on their feet from thirst, hunger, and explosively shitting themselves all over the caves, and having their skeletons shaken constantly by bombings. But in his defense, they mostly started off that way too. Like pretty much the only thing that the Americans had added to this mix was the explosions. But cracks were beginning to form within the ranks of the Japanese as well. Several of Kuribashi's commanders were beginning to refuse to put their men back in the caves, demanding that they be allowed to fight and die out in the open. Because it's important to know that, it's been like 2 weeks, 3 weeks at this point, 4 weeks. They have not left the caves. The only sunlight they had seen is the stuff that shines through gun ports.
Truly, truly mole maxing.
No one has ever mole maxed more.
Fair enough.
And I don't think that's a record that should be attempted to be defeated. Like, if I was the military Guinness Book of World Records, I would say that this record is no longer contestable. And when you remember just how terrible life in those caves was becoming, you can hardly blame them. Kuryabashi managed to keep them in line and was still holding back on frontal assaults and charges, but only barely. Even Baron Nishi, his kinda sorta friend, began to catch shit from him, in his case, for wasting supplies. Now, this has to be, in my opinion, one of the dumbest things they do during the entire battle. While the Marines had water purification units on the beach that were shipping water inland in an endless stream of metal water cans, the Japanese were down to almost nothing. This went for everything else too, ammo included, but specifically water. Water's the main problem here. A few days before, Nishi had got in trouble for using their scarce supply of water to, I swear to God, wash one of his few remaining tanks.
What?
This honestly is the dumbest tanker shit I've ever heard, but is absolutely something I could see someone doing. Like, I could see one of my tank commanders back when I was enlisted being like, I know we're all down to, a coffee cup full of water a day, but you really need to make that bitch sparkle. Like, well, how about we get to work?
I must wash my big metal wife.
And in another case, he was reprimanded for using some of their last medical supplies to treat a wounded U.S. Marine, which is interesting. There's only 2 cases that we know of alive U.S. Marines falling into the hands of the Japanese during the Battle of Iwo Jima. Only 2. This is only accounts for one of them. We legitimately have no idea we don't know how the second one was killed because neither of them survived. But in this case, Nishi refused to not treat him because he was captured wounded. I'm not saying this to whitewash his personality or anything, but like, that's something he did. It was not the only time he did this. And everybody was mad at him for it. I should say, from everything that I've read, they weren't pissed at him for treating the Marine. They were pissed at him for using their almost non-existent medical supplies on him. They're like, bro, we're gonna need those things. Like, use to save them for us. We have nothing. We are piling goop into our wounds. Another thing that was pretty interesting about Nishi, and something we kind of talked about in episode 1, is an event happened that created some tension between him and other Japanese officers. And that is, Americans had targeted him specifically for psychological operations.
Right. Yeah, I remember hearing about this, yeah.
They broadcasted in both English and Japanese for him, addressed to him, calling him Mr. Baron Nishi.
They're just holding up a giant photo of a Portillo's hot dog. You want this, don't you?
Now, they were calling for surrender. Americans, of course, knew who he was thanks to his time in LA when he was drinking and whipping shitties with Charlie Chaplin. And they knew that he was one of the commanders on Iwo. Several officers around Nishi thought this was suspicious, but Nishi laughed this off, saying that, like, the Americans wouldn't be broadcasting and asking for my surrender if they knew I left my Olympic champion horse back in Tokyo. Like, they only want me for my horse.
We're creating the situation of a imperial Japanese Shergar.
I also feel like the idea that he would bring his horse to Iwo Jima, which seems like a place one does not graze horses at, just seems kind of ridiculous. I mean,
I'm kind of surprised he didn't, just because the kind of guy he was. Like, I have a feeling he was explicitly told no horses allowed.
Like, at the rate we're running out of topics to make movies about World War II, because obviously there is, like, essentially 2 categories. There is the overly saccharine British World War II nostalgia movie about, like, oh, well, what about the postmen of World War II? And then you have the American one is like, we are going to turn the entirety of the men aged 18 to 25 from the Midwest into mulch, and you're going to be sad and you're going to remember it. Let's try a different tack. Let's, what if he did bring the horse? Speculative fiction. Let's tell the story from the horse's perspective.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like a fucking Milos
they did
Forman
that.
movie.
It's called War Horse.
Well, I'm just imagining a Milos Forman movie like you're just describing about this horse having a completely normal life. It's like it's the one person who had a normal World War II, and it just ends with a blank cut like the end of The Sopranos, because that's when the Bob kills the horse. But he had no idea, so he had a normal time.
Nishi sitting on Iwo Jima penning the most depressing love poems he can to his horse in Tokyo.
What if the horse wrote a death poem too? And it's just like,
we have to put peanut butter in the horse's mouth so he can compose his death poem.
All the nays are just in perfect haiku meter.
I'm trying to read it, but it looks like someone just dipped his hoof in ink and had him kick something.
No, it's actually a beautiful haiku. It's like, You know, something about like the eternal hopefulness of a summer morning, children to stomp, an apple held in a closed hand, fingers bitten.
No, it's just no, what they would do is dip its tail in ink and then like be perfect like sumaye strokes to create the kanji.
These are all important tenets in the faith of Eastern Orthodoxy.
Yeah, this is the Far East version of it.
It's Far Eastern Orthodoxy.
Yeah, it was brought over by missionaries. So there were secret practitioners amongst the Portuguese. They landed in the 1500s and converted some of the Japanese.
That's why they crucified Andrew Garfield in that movie. He secretly snuck a horse into Japan.
Hey, I've never seen the Emperor ride a horse. That's all I'm saying. The approaches to Motoyama were terrible, and by far the worst terrain on the entire island of horrible terrain. Marines would almost be forced to leave their armored support behind, thanks to volcanic terraced rock paths being too small, and where they weren't, they had been stacked full of landmines and tank traps. Instead of doing that and knowing how bad it would be without them, Marine engineers would clear a lot of these obstacles, both built by the Japanese and just natural ones, with bulldozers and explosive charges. The whole place was a honeycomb of defenses, with Marines themselves calling it a hornet's nest, with thousands of different tiny little holes sticking out of tunnel networks they did not know of and didn't see, only big enough for a gun barrel to stick out of. Like, it literally looked like the island itself was shooting at them.
It'd be like that video from a couple of years ago of the American guy in Vietnam, and the guy just like pops up out of the hole and he starts shouting at him.
That must have been so good for that Vietnamese tour guide.
Oh, the tour guide is just like pissing himself laughing. It's so funny. If you haven't seen it and you're listening to this, pause the episode, go put it into YouTube or whatever. It is incredible.
Every time you see like an older white guy on vacation in Vietnam, there's a not zero chance you could scare the shit out of them like that.
Mm-hmm.
Worse still is there's no way to attack Motoyama other than straight through all this shit, with one Marine colonel giving their attack quite possibly the worst nickname I have ever heard of. He called it a, quote, grunt and crunch operation.
Yeah, I've been in a few of those situations.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
Who up grunting the crunch?
Go away, grunt crunching.
I am the Crunchler, and here's my sidekick, Grunt Man.
I hate it so much.
Grunt and crunch.
Grunt and crunch sounds like a very horrible mistake you make after a long night of drinking and you don't fully remember it.
That is the perfect form for the eccentric movement of a deadlift. Grunt and crunch.
That's gonna be my first like bodybuilding program that I publish. It's gonna be called Grunt and Crunch.
Grunt and Crunch with Choke Sabian.
Hell yeah. Knowing whatever happened during the attack was going to be bad, the reserves were finally deployed under the command of, and possibly biggest in name alert of the series on this one, General Graves Blanchard Erskine.
Graves Erskine, okay.
Yes.
I love that they had to give him the middle name Blanchard, and he made sure to go by it all the time. Like, you had to say the whole thing. He was never Graves Erskine. He was Graves Blanchard Erskine.
The only other person I've ever heard of with the surname Erskine was former president of Ireland, Erskine Childers.
Well, that was the thing I said. Remember that the officer was going to be named Mercutio Vanderbilt, and the soldier was the chief petty officer was Al Fuck. But no, it's actually his real name is Mercutio Aristotle Vanderbilt, because that was a normal name if you went to an Episcopal boarding school.
Who looks at their young baby boy? Like, I don't have kids, but like, imagine you're looking down at your young baby boy in the hospital. You're like, oh, I have such a beautiful name for him. Let's call him Graves.
There's a weird tradition with those things where they're like, oh, your first name is basically like your mom's maiden name or some family name or something. It's like
I've seen
weird
that before.
Fake American aristocracy thing, yeah.
And then the baby in the cot next to it is just called Joe Gunt.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
If you name your child Graves, he only has like one career opportunity available to him, and that is becoming a Marine Corps general. And with his deployment, 3 entire divisions, at least on paper, because obviously those numbers are a bit fucky here, were set to advance up the plateau. But the plateau is made up of different parts, all of which would need to be conquered individually, but at the same time. Hill 382 and its offshoots. There's also Turkey Knob and
Turkey Knob?
Turkey Knob.
Turkey Knob sounds like a town in southern Indiana, to be completely honest with you. Like
these are names obviously given by the Marines.
Yeah.
It's not like General Kurabayashi's like, yes, we must defend Turkey Knob.
Yeah, they're like, we've heard of this mysterious new world bird. We're going to name this mountain after it on this... The island that smells of farts.
The third item sold by the guy from the Simpsons episode where Homer goes to New York. Kavkalash, crab juice, turkey knob.
No no plate, on stick. And the main position, nicknamed the amphitheater. All of them together were collectively known as probably the most accurate nickname ever given to a military position, the meat grinder, which I'm sure is something Marines love to hear.
Before there was Hamburger Hill, there was Turkey Knob and the meat grinder. Okay. Nowadays, people are too lazy. They need Hamburger Helper Hill.
Hamburger Helper Hill defended by a giant Hamburger Helper hand equipped with a John Basilone machine gun in each one of its fingers.
Anti-woke Lions Led by Donkeys only history podcast, but anti-woke is convinced that it actually wasn't. It was called Pork Chop Knob, but then because of creeping Islamicization, they decided to call it Turkey Knob instead. Because that's
there was a different battle called Pork Chop Hill in Korea.
Pork Chop Hill, yeah, I know about that one. Yeah.
No, see, it once again, I just can't get out. Turkey Knob and the meat grinder on the Morning Zoo crew. I'm resisting so much using the voice changer button on my mixer right now.
Okay, Tom, go ahead.
I could use the button.
You can use the button
one time.
You're welcome to Turkey Knob and the Meat Grinder on Morning Zoo.
You might want to pitch it maybe halfway down as much as that, because now it sounds like literally the voice of sulfur itself is speaking from Iwo Jima.
That's the
voice of Iwo Jima. I am filled with Japanese men in tunnels.
So you have to talk like Brian Molko to sound normal with that filter.
The term meat grinder was kind of indicative to the entire battle. There's no clever tactic that was going to win. No maneuver that was going to open the front up. It was just feeding men into hell until something broke. Fighting through these turned into exactly that. Marines fighting over inches, fighting Japanese soldiers popping out of holes or fighting out of reinforced bunkers, and then trying to burn them out. Unless they were caught out in the open, Japanese soldiers could generally retreat back into the tunnel system for safety. That was until Marines figured out the idea of like, well, we see the opening here. We'll go a couple feet off to the side and put a big old bomb there and blow a hole into the tunnels. Then they pump them full of white phosphorus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember Spec Ops The Line.
This would burn the men inside or flush them to the surface where they could be killed. This is where the Army Air Corps kind of sort of on purpose but accidentally discovered the concept of the bunker buster. They were coming up with their own terrifying way to murder people. So they were mostly flying the P-51 Mustang, and they could be equipped with a 1,000-pound bomb on a 10-second delay. They came up with the idea of dive bombing low and then dropping the big fuckers within crags or valleys on the plateau. The weight of the thing would sometimes just rip through stone walls where it had been dug out by the Japanese. On one occasion I could find, the bomb smashed into the side of a mountain just perfectly that when it exploded, it sheared the wall off of a cliff and exposed the whole tunnel network to open air.
Oh my God.
Kind of like looking in through the glass of like an ant colony.
No, it is the scene from The Simpsons where the front of Lenny's house falls over.
Yes.
Don't tell anybody I live like this.
It's soldiers who have at this point discarded pants because they are just shitting everywhere. Like, oh God, don't tell anybody we fight a war like this. Obviously, close air support at this time is, let's call it an art form more than a science. Jazz airstrikes, if you will. Many of the pilots flying overhead had no formal training in it at all and just kind of learned on the job. Bro science with bombs, if you will. And, add in the don't give a shit attitude of 1940s pilots. Mm-hmm. But they had become pretty good at landing bombs only a few hundred feet of men on the ground when they were called in. But these bombs were much smaller than these 1,000-pounders. These fuckers are no joke. And when struggling up the meat grinder, called for the thing to be dropped just a short ways away, the air-ground liaison warned them that, like, hey, this could kill us too. The Marines, who were taking so much incoming fire they could hardly move and were burning through thousands of gallons of napalm out of flamethrowers just to take over a hole in the ground, didn't really care. One battalion commander told the liaison, well, you can't hurt us any worse than we're already being hurt.
The bunker buster at the meat grinder sounds like a menu item at those restaurants that they have the weighing scales outside. And if you weigh
like that one in Vegas.
Yeah.
Heart Attack Grill, I think it was called.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
We need to, this is a new business idea. Iwo Jima themed restaurant. And
yeah, to run uphill to the buffet.
No, you actually have to dig a tunnel and go underground and come up through the floor.
Oh, no, that's what the employees do. You have to get around them.
Yes, true.
By now, it's March. The Allies had projected 10 days to not defeat the Japanese, but secure the entire island. It had now been 2 weeks, and they'd suffered 13,000 casualties. Some units were hit much harder than others, as these things tend to go, with several losing all of their officers and NCOs, only for them to be replaced and then lose all those too. The Marines had been struggling through the meat grinder. Kurabayashi's line was bending, and tens of thousands of men were now fighting and dying within a 1 square mile combat zone, pockmarked by thousands of caves and fighting positions.
Jesus. Yeah, this all sounds it keeps like multiplying on itself, getting exponentially more horrible and grim.
They're just like crawling over each other. Like that's the thing that like all of the firsthand accounts I'm reading is like, no, this fight isn't forward, it's up and down. And like we're on top of each other.
Yeah, this is orcs versus Tyranids type shit.
Marines are kind of doing like painting it red makes it go faster type shit.
The Marines are just screaming Gorka Morka as they're like climbing up the walls.
I mean, that is just, have you met a Marine?
Yeah. I mean,
Marines listening,
100%.
Are we wrong? I love you guys, but come on. The meat grinder had earned its name, and victory was measured in grim statistics. Like one Marine division fighting for 9 days to simply advance about 1.5 miles. By March 4th, the entire advance into the meat grinder had been bogged down to a stalemate. General Schmidt called his leaders together on the island to come up with a way to break out of this. It was a novel solution that boiled down to, what if we dropped God themselves down on the fucking plateau? Enough explosives that you would have to give God 2 for flinching, right? Every single piece of fire support would be brought to bear for tens of thousands of rounds. The Navy, including a battleship, 2 cruisers, 3 destroyers, and various gunboats, would fire tens of thousands of their own shells, tens of thousands from land-based artillery. And then when they were done and the airspace was clear, it'd be bombed to shit with as many planes as they had. And remember, they had over 1,000 planes. All this came raining down on March 6th. But soon, Marines, who were hunkering down into the sand, learned that when you fire that much shit in one direction, it's more of a to whom it may concern situation.
Yeah.
The shells came crashing down only a few hundred feet in front of them. The power of the blast collapsed the few holes they'd been able to dig, and other shells fell directly into Marine lines. We don't know exactly how many Marines were killed by friendly fire, but it's thought to be dozens and wounded hundreds. But this is also a pre-assault bombardment. Nothing could really be done. Marines were waiting for it to be over, so then they could just launch their attack and could do nothing other than close their eyes and hope the next one didn't come down on them. Or maybe they were like, well, at least I won't have to be on Iwo Jima anymore if it does. The forward observers did try to do their best to direct the strikes accurately, but with all of the delays and so many moving parts, the thousands of men and the tiny space we're talking about here, most of the time it was just too late before a group of Marines vanished in a puff of black sand and blood, once again creating a new kind of goop.
Yeah, Jesus. This is just keeps getting... I like making jokes as much as the rest of us, but my God, it just keeps getting more and more like sort of like reverse or like alternate universe Katamari Damacy sort of thing. Like you're taking pain and misery and destruction and making it into a smaller and smaller and smaller space until you eventually just have like the hell cube. Like it's really, really grim.
It's less than ideal. And just imagine this amount of explosives being fired into such a small area. And then a couple dozen meters down, there is dudes.
Yeah.
Like just getting absolutely fucking rocked. The concussive blast from these shells going through the tunnels, from like letters that I read, said like men were vomiting and having diarrhea, worse than usual, I should say, like going mad. Because this goes on for hours.
Yeah.
Like, they're constantly being bombed. There's not a single time where these mountains aren't shaking.
Also, as well, like the sheer amount of air displacement through the tunnels, like likely would burst your eardrums as well.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine.
And if you were in one part of the tunnel and not the other, the blast pressure would also just liquefy your insides.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the thing that some people don't understand. Is like when a bomb goes off near you, if it's close enough, the blast wave will just rupture your organs,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
you
it's
die
nuts.
even worse than if it landed on you.
And also, all of these tunnels are interconnected as well. So, like, the
Yeah.
only displacement of any air or pressure is going outwards. So, like, if you survive, at best, you're probably deaf and, like, completely discombobulated, and then you'll die.
Yep. It all ends with you dying.
Yeah.
Watching all of this happen, the Americans thought there was no way anyone could survive what they had just witnessed. Of course, they would be wrong. As Marines advanced using tanks the short amount of time that they could, their flamethrowers clearing out caves and dugouts, thousands of Japanese positions once again opened fire on them. They struggled deeper and deeper into the meat grinder, and they came to a horrible realization. The positions that the Japanese had captured the entire Marine advance, 3 divisions, in enfilading fire. This means, for people who don't know, that they could fire down the entire length of the Marine advance. An advance that, once again, quickly ground to a halt as Marines had to leave behind their tanks and begin fighting up the rocks.
To put it into perspective, so imagine if people were all lined up in a row for a machine gun to fire and hit all of them, they would have to traverse it left and right. If, say, for example, it was like one big line but caught from the side. That's bad, but even worse is if you're one big line or one big column caught from the front with nowhere to go, because then they can not only shoot right into you, straight into a smaller group, but the bullets are going down your axis of advance, which is to say that every single person is basically like caught in that zone. Enfilading fire is extremely, you don't want to be in that zone. I mean, if you're bending or if you're...
No, it's magnificent.
It's wonderful. The best thing that can happen to you is that with the element that you're trying to engage is in a position where you have them in enfilading fire and they can't really take cover. If it's you, you're kind of fucked.
And think of it this way, being caught enfilading fire as like a squad and one guy is firing at
we're
you
talking
is
about
bad
3
enough.
divisions.
Yeah, this is a 3-division long enfilade.
Very, very bad. This is basically... The best way I could describe it is this is sort of like enough people have played video games and seen pop culture stuff to understand about the sort of fatal funnel getting shot in the doorway. And it's like the fatal funnel times 30,000 people, basically. 30,000 people jammed into this one door. Shot,
And-
yeah. 30,000 crazy white boys shock door maker by being able to jam into one fatal funnel. And
By speaking perfect death throws.
yeah, by speaking perfect Midwest English. And it's bad, man. You said those words and you said the 3 divisions. I was like, oh, that fucking sucks, dude.
And there is conservatively about 10,000 Japanese soldiers stationed at the Citadel. Most of them are firing at this enfilade.
Wow. Yeah, you're...
It's about as bad as it could possibly be.
Yeah.
Like if the Japanese were able to be supplied and they had air cover, like it's hard to see how they lose this.
The military basically doesn't have a like fake acronym or turn of phrase or neologism homophobic enough to represent this situation in the way that people would deploy it. Because your garden variety Bohica or barrel of dicks or anything along those lines like doesn't do it justice. Like the military minds haven't given enough thought to describe like what the superlative homophobic slur about a situation would be to describe this, because it doesn't happen very often.
And every military superlative is homophobic.
Yes, homophobic or sexist or just vaguely sexual.
Or both.
Yeah, both.
Or yeah, it's always bare minimum has to do with dicks.
It's got to be sexual, and it's probably homophobic, if not misogynist and creepy too. I mean, we're not going to pretend that we were above laughing at them or saying them when we were in our but also Joe and I, like I said before, we only, much like the people described in episode 1, we only really feel at home in a minefield. So
It's
that's
true.
just more to do with our personalities. But we've tried to grow as people. I'm just saying, I read a lot of military history, not as much as you, but I have read a bit. This sucks. This is awful. This is just one of those things where you're like, oh, and you're on a flat fucking island with no cover.
Yeah, and going up a mountain.
Yeah.
Or a plateau. And like a good way of just like describing how the Marines felt here is like what that battalion commander said. It was just like, well, if you drop a 1,000-pound bomber on top of my head, you're not hurting me any worse than we're already being hurt.
Yep.
Like that's a perfect way of accepting this, where the battalion commander's like, no, we're dying either way.
Yep.
You might as well drop a bomb on us too.
Yeah. He's sort of like calling for aerial bombardment on your own position is at least a chance it'll go right. Whereas like carrying on with the current situation,
it's not good. Like I said, this fighting wasn't front against front. Like if you're picturing a battle in your head, it turned into thousands of small tooth and nail struggles as Marines and Japanese murdered one another over the mouths of caves and bunkers. This was close work. Grenades, charges, flamethrowers, knives, bayonets, swords. These men were so close to one another, they could, and often did, scream insults at one another while trying to kill each other. Like, the Marines had learned a couple of swear words in Japanese or just screamed at them in English. They could clearly hear and see one another. But that didn't mean the Japanese reduced to being entirely reactive either. They could still maneuver, they could still fight, and they could still direct their artillery with relative ease, considering everything that was happening. For example, when one company of Marines prepared to move up into the rocks to start their movement, they immediately got plastered with a hailstorm of screaming Jesus mortars. This killed and wounded half of the company before they can even begin.
Jeez.
And this happened all across the line. This time when the assault ground down, though, the Marine withdrawal was not ordered. Instead, Marine commanders just kept throwing in artillery and airstrikes directly in front of their men, including a fuckload of white phosphorus. After a whole day of fighting, most of the line had only moved forward by 50 yards.
Jesus Christ.
This is like bad days in 1915, 16, 17 level.
Right. Yeah. This is not
island.
what you expect when you think of like island hopping.
Yeah.
But the fighting continued anyway. Marines kept trying to blow and burn their way forward. Bulldozers are sent forward again, trying to dig a path up the rocks for tanks. In most cases, bulldozer crews had to do this while under constant fire, with their only protection being the bulldozer they were driving in. This slowly, horrifically began to work. Each time a path was broken, Sherman tanks and 75mm gun carriers were rushed in. Occasionally they'd get blown to pieces by mines. A bulldozer then would once again move forward and push them out of the way, and then more armor was moved in. And I gotta say, as a tank crewman, I cannot imagine the worst place to be than like, oh yeah, assault up this plateau. Oh, don't mind that burning hulk in front of you. We'll just push it down the mountain with the bulldozer. What's the odds there's another landmine right in front of that one? That being said, the Marines finally dropped so many explosives on the Japanese that Schmidt had to order his artillery to stop. The Marines had fired so much artillery at Motoyama Plateau, they broke their logistics system. They ran out of artillery shells, and they had to wait for more ammo to be transferred off the fleet onto the beach and to the front line. And then if that wasn't bad enough, Marines who had been struggling up the rocks found that even when they moved forward, nothing was ever really secure. Like before, Japanese soldiers just kept emerging from caves and holes behind them because they would like blow over like a bunker or a little firing port and be like, position handled. They didn't know that there was a network of tunnels behind it all. They knew there was some tunnels, but not like this. So they'd have to circle back around and fight over the same fucking position all over again, sometimes, again, resorting to flamethrowers and explosives. Sometimes the Japanese wouldn't wait for the Americans to find them and instead waited for the Marines to advance over their position and then blow themselves up with hundreds of pounds of explosives, collapsing the mountain face and sending Marines sometimes flying 45 feet into the air.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, one of these attacks wiped out half of a company.
That's like 50, 60 dudes in one go.
Yeah. And most of the time how this happened wasn't that like the Japanese weren't fighting from their position and then would wait for the Marines to come over. What would happen is they'd fight from their position until they ran out of bullets or like everybody was killed or wounded inside. They realized they couldn't fight anymore and then would wait for the Marines to advance over them and then detonate their part of the cliff. But the tactics were working. Kind of. The Marines were absolutely cooked. Some divisions had been reduced to 40% strength. Their leadership had been killed and then replaced by reinforcements, and then those replacements were killed again and then replaced again. One battalion had a casualty rate of 115% for officers.
Yeah. Sounds about right, yep.
They're chewing through the replacements as soon as they got them. Young lieutenants with no experience whatsoever were left in command of companies, though generally not very long because they got killed too. Company B of the 2nd Battalion 26th Marines lost 9 company commanders in 3 weeks.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, there just weren't enough officers to act as replacements anymore, leaving the job to the most senior non-commissioned officers around, who were probably, statistically, already replacements for the original sergeants and staff sergeants and whatever. As you can tell, command is breaking down. The men were breaking down. Everybody is tired. Nobody is sleeping. Nobody is in command of anything that's in full strength anymore. And the people in command shouldn't be in command. Look, I was an NCO. Nate, you're an officer. If at any point I have to take your job, something terrible has happened.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know what I mean?
I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that but 9 company commanders in 3 weeks is, I mean, at that point, it's like, I know the system was just very different back then, but like, you are just not combat effective. Like, that's insane.
It just doesn't work. Like, imagine how enlisted men feel. Like, no enlisted man likes their officer at a personal level. Very, very few times is that not the case.
And also, like, when you're in combat, like, it kind of doesn't fucking matter. It really is like, are they good at their job? Yeah.
But after going through 9 of them, like, you don't have to worry about morale anymore. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, no kidding.
You're in a deficit. Like, you've lost 115% of that, too.
That's insane.
Graves Blanchard Erskine, gotta say the whole thing, was pissed at how this fighting was going. Everything was being ground down to nothing, so he demanded permission to conduct a night attack, which weirdly was just not something the US military did. There had not been a coordinated large-scale night attack throughout the entire Pacific War so far, so he wanted to launch one up through Hill 362C, arguing that it would catch the Japanese by surprise and open the whole thing up. His boss, probably exhausted by everything that was going on and his critical supply of lieutenants running low, gave it the green light. So on March 6th, the attack began. Marines chucked smoke grenades right before dawn and then advanced behind a line of flamethrower men, which just sounds horrifying for everybody involved. And everything went perfectly. They advanced up the hill, they took the position, and then their company commander, who was a young lieutenant, realized we're on the wrong hill. They advanced in the wrong direction. Yeah, look,
me.
A night attack is hard for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, they didn't have night vision back then. Like, you're doing the best you can to stay oriented. Like, it's, yeah, fuck. Like, you know, the instant is like, oh, goddamn fucking lieutenant. It's like, no, everyone's fucked, man. It's just like, I don't know.
Everybody's fucked. And that lieutenant would never have been in that position if everything was right.
Correct,
you know?
yeah.
So they captured Hill 331, not 362C. Their actual objective was actually 250 yards away.
Right.
So their surprise night attack once again turned into a bloody broad daylight fight back up the original hill. At this point, Marine commanders knew this is just what the fighting was going to look like, so they refused to call off the attack. The fighting went on all day and throughout the night. And finally, they got to the top of the hill they originally supposed to get to 12 hours later. Once at the top, worried about a counterattack, they dug in, strung up barbed wire, planted anti-personnel mines, and for a few hours, stopped charging up hills. And this fear of a counterattack ended up being a pretty valid one. Commander of the Japanese forces in the amphitheater area, Sadasue Senda, had nothing left to fight with. Like, he knew it was over. They were mulching Marines, but like, it's done. Like, this is decided. However, he had nothing to break out towards either. Instead, he decided he would launch a night raid to cause as much damage as he could. This is often called a bonsai attack, but again, it wasn't. It was a traditional, by-the-books night attack. The Marine linemen hit with artillery, and then the Japanese attempted to penetrate the line at multiple points, trying to get back to hit their logistics. Unfortunately for them, like I pointed out, when they got to the top of that hill, they dug the fuck in, and then they ran directly into that. Landmines shredded them. The area, which was pre-bracketed with artillery, immediately blew them to pieces. And while some elements of the attack managed to get through all of this and actually fight all of the way to the command position of the 2nd Battalion, where people had to like lean out of foxholes after holding radios and like shoot at them with their handguns, they were all killed. One of the few Japanese survivors of the Battle of Iwo Jima witnessed the attack and said, quote, "I saw torsos with no limbs, dismembered legs, arms and hands, and internal organs splashed onto the rocks." And it soon became clear to everyone that the Japanese could not keep up with the grinding pressure of the Marine attack. And it makes sense. At this point, this kind of battle is a logistics battle. Who can keep feeding what into the meat grinder? And the Marine logistics system, the Navy logistics system, the United States military's logistics system is just dumping everything constantly onto Iwo Jima. The Japanese do not have one. They are not being resupplied. They have not been resupplied since the battle began. Everything is running low. There's almost no ammo left for anything. The artillery was beginning to run out of ammo. Their counter bombardments are becoming less and less intense with each passing hour, and even the Marines were noticing. The only thing that was slowing the Marines down at this point was the island itself. And as they continued to fight up the plateau, Iwo Jima acted as a kind of equalizer. Its horrible, broken terrain made any large-scale traditional attacks impossible. Armored support attacks were also rendered to almost uselessness. Fighting was not back and forth, it was up and down. And each and every crack in the rocks became a fight to the death at a face-to-face range. And if to add to the ambiance of the entire thing, huge sulfur vents kept blowing fart-smelling steam all around them, blanketing the area into a cloud. Finally, by March 9th, the Marines had fought all the way to the northern shore of the island, straight through the middle of it, getting to the north coast. There's a story that someone had dipped like a canteen cup with water from the ocean from the north coast and brought it back to their commander, showing that they had made it there. And this split the remaining Japanese garrison into two parts, separating them in the northwest and the northeast. The northwest at Kitano Point is where Kuribayashi and his command bunker were. The northwest is also virtually unapproachable over land, and Kuribayashi assumed that this would be his final stand. The depth of his cave meant that none of this constant bombardment was ever going to hurt him. His firing ports, bunkers, and fighting positions were placed hundreds of feet up onto a sheer cliff face, and he was dozens of meters underground. That being said, everyone inside was in a horrible state. According to his diaries and letters, the constant, unrelenting shelling had reduced the men under his command into what he called a catatonic state. As for the state of the caves themselves, they became a pit of disease and squalor. There was nowhere to put the men who died, so they were just kind of piling up. They tucked them into corners or just left them where they fell and had to step over them. Adding to that, it was about 120 degrees Fahrenheit inside, incredibly humid. The smell was indescribable. Their only supply of fresh water at this point came from rainwater, which now men were reduced to fighting each other over. At this point in the battle, Kuribashi's command was reduced to demanding men stay in place and fight rather than launch bonsai attacks. Or as he put it, quote, everyone would always like an easy way to die early. Marine commanders rounded up a few Japanese POWs and sent them towards the Japanese lines with letters to Kuribashi, asking him to surrender, saying this is pointless, the battle's over, what are you doing? Marines assumed that the answer would be no. No Japanese garrison commander had ever surrendered to them yet. They also assumed that POWs wouldn't be coming back, either killed by their own comrades for surrendering, or they would simply rejoin the army. Instead, they all returned with a politely written letter in English from Kuribashi, thanking the Marines for their letter, but saying he would not be surrendering. New plateau, who dis?
Jesus.
Now, he knew that the end was near, and he sent his final messages to Tokyo. They were so damning to the Japanese government and military, they had to be edited before they were published in Japanese media, because at this point, the Battle of Iwo Jima had turned him into something of a celebrity in Japan as he continued to hold out. His original letter said, quote, the gallant fighting of the men under my command has been such that even the gods would weep. Utterly empty-handed and ill-equipped against a land, sea, and air attack of a material superiority that surpasses the imagination. When it was published, the line about being utterly empty-handed and all that was completely cut out. And instead, it was replaced with, quote, with all of my officers and men reverently chanting bonsais for the emperor's long life. He never wrote that. He didn't say a fucking word about the emperor in his final letter.
Fucking hell, lads.
From here, the tunnel network was increasingly collapsing, captured, set on fire through one mean or another. His communications with Tokyo began to fail, and from mid-March on, they could only communicate with the nearby island of Chichijima, with communications mostly boiling down to just how bad everything was getting. By March 21st, he reported that he and his men had no food or water for a week at that point. 2 days later, the Japanese forces at Chichijima got the last radio message from the Iwo Jima garrison that said simply, quote, to all men of Chichijima, goodbye.
Shit's fucked, bro.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
you're not in space, homie, just surrender. Like, it doesn't gotta go this way. Still, the garrison did not launch a banzai charge, even if, again, it is written that way. Small groups of Japanese soldiers did launch counterattacks, normally at night, but the goal wasn't a meaningless suicide charge. In one case, a group of Japanese soldiers snuck all the way to the second airfield and attacked them in there, trying to take out pilots and Seabees and Marines. They caused hundreds of casualties before they were wiped out. This is something of a middle ground. These could be considered banzai charges. They could also not be considered banzai charges. You could consider these suicide attacks because they didn't expect to go back to their caves.
Mm-hmm.
They expected to die. But since they had a very tactical idea in mind, rather than just killing themselves, like they were trying to take out the airfield, they didn't run out screaming, armed with bayonets and swords. They snuck out in the night. They broke through the lines and kept going. At some point here, both Nishi and Kuribashi are killed, but we have no idea how, where, or when, and there are multiple stories of how that finally all went down. For Nishi, he was either burned to death by a flamethrower in a cave, killed himself, or died fighting sometime around March 21st. We have no idea. Kuribashi is a more complicated death to figure out. Stories range from dying in that final attack on the airfield, though nobody knows for sure. His body was never identified, and all of the ranks on their uniforms had been cut off before they left the caves. So even if he was there, you wouldn't be able to tell from looking at his uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Also, per Japanese military custom at the time, when it came to banzai charges, the commanders almost never took part in them. They would order the banzai charge, see all the men off, and then go back and kill themselves. There's another story that he killed himself in his bunker, and rather than the normal sort of shooting himself in the head or blowing himself up with a grenade, he committed ritual seppuku.
Yep.
With an aide acting as his second to cut his head off, so it could be carried away and hidden. But it's just another thing we'll never know.
Yeah. It's a shame, though. I think it would be interesting to know which way he died.
I wouldn't be surprised if he killed himself in his cave in one way or another, because he did say in one of his letters that he's like, from this point forward, I'll not be leaving the caves again.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So it makes sense that he would kill himself, to me, I suppose. Iwo Jima was officially declared secure March 26, 1945. The Marines had suffered horrendously. 24,035 casualties, or 1 out of every 3 who landed there.
Jesus Christ.
6,140 of those casualties were deaths. 2 Marines were known to be taken prisoner. Like I said, 1 was treated by Nishi, but neither of them survived, and we really don't know what happened to them. For the Japanese, about 200 men were taken prisoner, most of them taken while wounded, but the garrison was completely annihilated, and 22,000 died. But just because the island was declared secure didn't actually mean it was secure. The Marines were quickly replaced by the U.S. Army's 147th Infantry Regiment, which is the Ohio National Guard, and they soon found themselves fighting a guerrilla war for months because it turned out that there was thousands of Japanese soldiers still in the mountains.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, great.
I mean, which makes sense, right? Like, as this situation rapidly falls apart for the Japanese, like, there's going to be bunkers and tunnels and stuff with dudes inside who just don't know what happened. They've lost communications with everybody. And not to mention, when the battle started, Kuribashi's orders were, hey, if we lose, we'll continue a guerrilla war. This went on for months. The Ohio National Guard lost another 15 men killed and another 100 wounded before the final bastions of Japanese soldiers were wiped out. Kind of. Because they weren't wiped out. 2 Japanese machine gunners not only withstood all of this, but remained hidden in the caves of Iwo Jima until they finally surrendered in 1949.
Okay.
So I guess that was when it was finally secured.
Wow.
And that brings us to the point of all of this, right? The point of all this misery, this blood, and this death. I mean, I suppose the point was the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor and started the fucking war. But the tactical purpose of the battle was Iwo Jima eventually is a launching point for escorts to support the bombing campaign of the home islands. Nope.
Yeah.
Not even
because
a little
its
bit.
airstrip wasn't really suited for what they needed, right?
It wasn't that. I mean, it was perfectly suited for fighter aircraft, but they just weren't needed. That's all it boiled down to. By the time the island was taken, they just weren't necessary. Between the terminal decline of Japanese air power and just critical fuel shortages in Japan, their fighter interceptors just weren't a threat to the bombing campaigns anymore. Some people say that taking out Iwo Jima lessened Japan's early warning radar system, but didn't do that either. Yes, there was a station in Iwo Jima, but there's another station on the island of Rota, which was never taken. And it was like right next door. But it did end up accidentally having a huge role in the air war. But let me explain this first before we get there.
Okay.
An emergency landing spot for damaged or malfunctioning aircraft on their way back from missions over Japan. Even before the battle was over, bombers were making emergency landers on Iwo Jima's airfields. Before the invasion of Iwo, a bomber crew would have to ditch into the ocean, which would statistically kill half of all of the crews who were forced to do it. After Iwo was captured, however, 2,000 B-29 bombers would eventually land there. It's often said that the Iwo air bases saved the lives of 25,000 aviators. But what if I told you that all of that was fucking bullshit?
Oh, really?
I would not be surprised.
There's no method or reason behind these numbers, and they don't make any sense at all. But it is what you often see brought out when people try to rationalize the carnage of the Battle of Iwo Jima. Of the 2,000 bombers that would land at Iwo Jima, almost none of them were emergencies. 80% was normal refueling. Also, the number of lives saved is just comically inflated to make this battle seem like it was worth a shit.
Right.
Not even 3,000 B-29 crewmen died during the entire war. So the idea that this number would have been inflated multiple times over without Iwo Jima is just kind of absurd. It's without a doubt that the Iwo Jima airfield saved some bomber crews, but it wasn't even close to the number of Marines that died taking them. So what was the point?
There wasn't one?
No good answer.
Yep.
None. Just another step towards the home islands.
26,000 people on the Allied side, 20-odd thousand on the Japanese. For what? I don't know.
You know, that's the problem when it comes to describing the purpose of how these island hopping campaigns tend to work. Every island's supposed to have a purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not always the case. And I'm not saying this to rationalize this at all. It's just the nature of the horrible Pacific theater, which was like, yeah, in Europe, you might hemorrhage thousands of lives over a road or a town or a field, whatever it might be. But the Pacific campaign didn't have those things. It was individual, tiny little specks of nothing that the whole battle had to be fought in that you still had to take because everybody believed this war at this point was only going to end when the Allies invaded the home islands.
Mm-hmm.
You can't necessarily leave these islands left taken, but by nature of how brutal this battle was, and you know Okinawa's coming immediately afterwards, people tend to retroactively make them of individual importance rather than taking them as a larger whole, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. It was a horrible, bloody battle that had no immediate tactical purpose other than the greater campaign. It was just a thing that had to be taken. For Japan, Iwo Jima was just another crushing defeat. But it did do a lot to dispel the notion that some Japanese leaders had that Americans wouldn't be willing to pay any price to invade and capture any island. Like some of these guys were like, sure, we lost this place or that place, but they don't have the balls to come here. And through Iwo Jima and then immediately afterwards Okinawa, quite a few Japanese military leaders were like, oh, these dudes don't give a fuck about how many dudes they lose.
Yeah.
They'll just keep throwing them in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they got the supply train to use. This, again, would only be underlined a few days after Iwo Jima was declared when the invasion of Okinawa began.
Yeah.
And in closing, obviously, the Battle of Iwo Jima has become glorified in American military history. And I'm not saying it's wrong to do that, especially amongst Marines, and you can see why. As the story goes, the battle made sure that the body and the concept of the United States Marine Corps would not only survive the war, but whatever came afterwards. And that's not just me making that up. The Secretary of the Navy, Forrestal, said that when he went to Iwo Jima, because there was a time in American history where they thought that maybe we don't need the Marines. Or maybe, like everything else to do with World War II, the reason why it owns so much of the American historical mind, despite the fact that it's almost out of living memory at this point, is because with everything that the United States has done, has become, and continues to do, people are desperate to remember a time when wars had an end and the powers of empire were directed at someone who might actually fucking deserve it for once. The end.
And then we got to, in 2006, witness Clint Eastwood's biggest nightmare, a mountain full of Asian people.
Well, he did make the movies, so maybe he's just trying to scare himself. And like, no, you know what's really funny about those movies is like, obviously it's a partner, sister, brother film, whatever you want to call it, to Flags of Our Fathers. which is about the flag raising on Mount Suribachi. But the full details of that flag raising and who those dudes actually were didn't come out until after that movie was filmed and the book that it was based on and all that. So like, it's also not correct.
Obviously, Letters from Iwo Jima is, well executed and very well thought out. And like, it's based on the Japanese perspective.
It's shocking that Clint Eastwood made that film.
What I find very funny about this, I guess in a dark way, is like, obviously this is Japanese military history too, right? And they use Japanese actors. The film is almost entirely in Japanese. It was saved from being a complete box office bomb by its popularity in Japan.
That's not surprising.
It made I think like 1/8 of its budget back in American screenings. But the Japanese movie market, box office made it successful.
It's not easy now, and it was certainly harder then to pitch a film to American audiences that you have to read.
Yeah. It's changing, but when you think about Parasite doing as well as it did, but for a very long time, it was just dead in the water with American moviegoers to watch a film with subtitles.
Not me. I saw that shit on the day it came out, which I know nobody is surprised that I say that. But that movie rules. And obviously a lot of that's carried by Ken Watanabe being an absolute fucking powerhouse. It also wasn't filmed on Iwo Jima because you can't. The island of Iwo Jima is effectively a memorial.
Yeah.
Nobody lives there. You're not allowed to just go there. You only can go on very, very special tours. I would love to go there someday, but it'll probably never happen. And there's something to be said about the flaws in Letters from Iwo Jima being that glazes Kuribashi to an extent that is connected to his letters, completely disconnected from the greater Imperial Japanese project itself. All those things are completely valid.
Yeah.
100%. I think we've made our opinions on that very clear. But as a film, and especially from a perspective of kind of film that you just don't see, it's 100% worth watching. Also, the book Twilight of the Gods that I used as a source for this is one of the best books I've ever read about the Pacific Campaign. It's a few volumes long, but I think if you're interested in the greater Pacific Campaign, it's hard to beat. But as always, check out our show notes. I use a lot of shit for these 3 episodes. Everything in there is worth reading, but when it comes to pure digestibility of the narrative and history, it's hard to beat Twilight of the Gods. Normally, I point that out in episode 1, but I wanted to make sure you made it all the way here. But fellas, that's a series. But we do a thing on the show called Questions from the Legion. If you like to ask us a question, support the show on Patreon. You can send us a message on Patreon or in the Discord, which you'll also have access to. You can find instructions on how to do that on our Patreon as well. Or you can attach it to an artillery shell and fire it into the tunnel that we're all hiding in, and we will answer it on air. Today's question is military related. Tell us a stupid barracks story. For people who don't know, barracks for the military is best just understood as a dorm room full of idiots.
It's a dorm.
It's zero difference, except arguably they're worse most of the time. Stupid barracks story for me. I was lazy. I didn't want to clean my room, so I got a Roomba. I pooled in with my roommate and got a Roomba. It sucked. Roombas fucking blow. It's just a waste of money. But we did think it was very funny to attach a knife to it when people were in the room. And Roombas back then didn't have the best sensors in the world, so we routinely it wouldn't like stab people. Like it didn't have enough juice. Yeah, it was more of like a scary poke on the ankle. And we got a lot of people with that. We got in so much trouble because we forgot to take the knife off one Monday before barracks inspections. And my platoon sergeant came in and he was like, Specialist Kasabian, did you arm your fucking Roomba? And I couldn't think of what to say at that moment because, yes, that is a knife duct taped to my vacuum cleaner. There's no denying that. But the only thing I could say is like, I'm sorry, Sergeant, I wasn't aware that arming my Roomba was against barracks policy. I got to tell you, young enlisted guys out there, that was not the excuse he was looking for. I was in a lot of trouble.
Typically you don't get punched in the throat for stuff like that. It's more like they catch you in, a barracks inspection. You have like K2 in the room or something. But like, I could imagine you getting the living daylight smoked out of you for that one.
Yeah, he did think it was funny because at that point I had already achieved like senior specialist status. So like when your senior specialist does some shit like that, you don't even really get punished for it anymore because you're just like, of course you would fucking do that. Though I'm surprised it's not a gun.
I have there was the time when kind of like a barracks, I went over to visit Joe and I was staying in a hostel in The Hague. And like people who stay in hostels quite regularly are just like, you kind of know this happens, but heard a dude having a wank and then just like was sure he busted because he just let out the most exasperated sigh at the end. And I was just like, what the fuck? I just like,
had a lot of tension built up.
It was at a point when I was trying to go to sleep, so I was like, I'm just gonna put my headphones back on. The only other one that I can tell is I remember when I was in university and my friends had this alcoholic trampolinist with a slip disc living on their couch who would self-medicate with drinking bottles of wine and taking Nurofen Plus every day.
Tom, that's only a sentence I would ever imagine coming out of your mouth. These are things that I learned when I hang out with you, Tom.
Yeah, this is either you're talking to me or you've time traveled and you're talking to someone who works in like the regal French court.
I don't really have any because I was the person that you keep fun away from, except when I was in like airborne barracks as a cadet or, you know, ranger school and stuff like that, where everyone was equally shit. I mean, I do remember getting my brief that I was going to be platoon sergeant for the next day's mission when they had actually brought us back in because of emergency weather stuff during ranger school, because the first two phases of ranger school, they're just like, yeah, go ahead and die. Whereas the third phase of ranger school, they famously have killed enough people that like the safety standards are pretty rigorous. And we had gotten all of our clothes wet on the water crossing day, and then we got like freezing rainstorm, and so they're like, this is dangerous. We have to bring them back into the barracks, which was sick because we got to take showers and do laundry and stuff before going back out. But I got my briefing and I had to come out and get briefed by the ranger instructor, but I was in a shower naked, so standing at parade rest completely naked, and I have never made such perfect unbroken eye contact with another person. Anyway,
oh god, I have a story that's exactly like that.
But I was thinking about this that one time when we were in infantry school, like I went to infantry school in 2007 and the Army was fucking hurting back then. And so like there were days at a time where our instructors just like weren't there. Like they'd show up, like the NCOs would show up once a day to like, you know, do any admin stuff and give out MREs. But like there were days at a time when we just didn't do training because there was, I don't know what the fuck was going on. The Army was hurting. And we were basically camping out in the Mout site at Fort Benning. I don't know if you've ever been there, Joe. I can't remember what it's called anymore, but there's a military, basically military operations in urban terrain is what Mout stands for. Basically like practicing doing room clearing and like attacking
it's a fake city.
And it was all like cinder block village in kind of looked vaguely Eastern European because it was built before the global war on terror. And we basically had a competition because we were bored of like, what if let's dress this place up because we have all of our weapons. We have blank firing adapters. It's like take the BFAs off and dress this up and let's all see if we can take convincing photos like we're deployed so we can share them with girls we know from home on Facebook and see if we can get like sympathy nudes or something like that. And so
I like that officers do that.
So it was like a competition to like take the most like ridiculous fake war photos of yourself. And there's one because I have a really, really good one, but it was ruined by the fact that my buddy Jason, whose last name I won't give, is on the background fucking like doing the like, you know, Timbaland horny calling face from the Nelly Furtado video Promiscuous, like to his girlfriend at the time. So it's very obviously we're not fucking deployed because he's like basically hollering at a girl in the back. But I'm standing there basically like with a cigarette in my mouth, like just basically looking like to practice a 1,000-yard stare. I mean, boring. Days at a time, boring. Competitions of like who can take the hardest fucking slap on a bare belly kind of thing. Like we all wound up with like we were in some kind of weird like Stone Age tribe because of big red hand slaps. We played baseball with pine cones and sticks. One time it rained and everybody just went outside and just like took showers naked in the rain with bars, which doesn't really get you clean, unfortunately. I mean, the Army was the biggest waste of my time.
Collectively as a whole, yeah.
Unfortunately, no cool barrack stories because I'm where fun goes to die.
Since we haven't done a question from the Legion in the other 2 episodes because it was a series, I feel comfortable sharing another Mount-related story. So I was stationed at Fort Knox. They have a Mount site called the Zussman Training Center. Quite famously, from the rumors that I heard, Universal Studios helped build it because it's like a completely interactive city to train in. And I was made the opposition force. We're supposed to act as terrorists. We're in civilian clothes, whatever. And officers in training are training to take the city over from us. These are officers training to become cavalry scouts. So they haven't got their like job identifier yet. And it is the most boring fucking job on earth. Like Nate said, you just sit around doing nothing most of the time. We got so fucking bored that one of the instructors told us like, hey, and you get really bored because maybe the class coming in is particularly like dumb or whatever. They can't figure out the plans that they're going to do. And the instructors told them where we were finally, because they legitimately could not scout us out in the city. And we weren't really trying that hard. But they told us, like, hey, they found where you guys are sleeping. Don't run away. Just like sit here and wait for them. We got to give them something at this point. And we're like, all right, fine. So a buddy of mine, there's like 4 of us in here. There's probably like 50 people playing terrorists, but there's like 4 of us in this terrorist cell, quote unquote. And we're like, I want to fuck with these guys so hard. What do we do? And my friend comes up with the idea of what if they captured us playing strip poker?
Oh my God.
And me I was 19 or something.
Oh,
and again,
God.
I should point out here, this is a period of time in the military where only men could have these jobs, and this kind of thing was not considered
like an EO violation or something.
terrible. Yeah. It was. It's fucking
it is,
stupid.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, but yes.
Joe tip here, don't do this. And I was like, well, they can't catch us playing strip poker. Like, they're going to kick open the door, and then we're going to be in zip cuffs. Like, they're not going to catch us doing anything. And then my friend who comes up with the idea of the original, is like, well, what if we just strip naked and we're playing poker? And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Good idea. So we strip butt naked and we're playing poker. They kick open the door and they freeze in the door.
Oh, God.
They all have guns pointed at us, obviously blanks and whatever. And this is where my friend decides to take it to the next level because this is the kind of guy he was. This is the same year Borat came out.
God.
So we're all doing Borat accents.
Oh, fuck.
You kick open the door, and there's just like dudes covered in dirt, naked, sitting on the floor, just going, "My wife."
And we all smell terrible because it's been a month and we haven't showered. He stands up, puts his hands behind his back, and starts backing his ass up towards them, going, "Zip cuffs! You can put me in zip cuffs! Wowie wee woo!" They run. They ran out of the room. We affected their tactical retreat with my friend's bare ass.
Oh my fucking God,
and mind you,
dude.
Before all of this happens, the guy in charge of the lane, who's a major, walks in, sees us all there, and he's like, so this is how you're going to play this, huh? And we're like, yeah, sir. He's like, well, this should be interesting. So he's watching the whole thing. He records the whole thing on his shitty flip phone.
Oh, no. Oh, my God.
So this was like a training thing we'd have to do like once a year. The next year I got tagged for it again. We're sitting through the briefing of what to do as opposition force. They've added a new rule, which it says, at no point are you to fight naked. Please keep your clothes on. Mind you, this is a military unit, so like it's like a 100% turnover rate every 3 years.
So no one knows the story at this point.
Nobody knows the story. By the time we go back, all those officers have rotated away. Nobody's, but they tell this story like, well, what happened was, and I raised my hand. I was like, hey, sir, Specialist Kasabian, I was there. And he had me come up in front of the room and tell the story to easily the biggest laugh I've ever gotten in my life. And this includes all of our live shows. In a room full of senior non-commissioned officers and up to the rank of colonel.
Oh my
all
God.
Laughing hysterically. And then when that all ends, they're like, okay, we will not be doing that. No more of that.
Somewhere in a drawer in the Midwest, there's a flip phone with a video of Joe's dick and balls on it.
Full nude. Like I was dogs out, not a single thing on me other than a wristwatch. So
unwiped ass.
So random major from Fort Knox in 2007 or 8, I would guess. If you have that video, please delete it.
I would prefer if my unsanctioned army nudes got deleted. That would be great.
That's actually going to be the background video for the next live show. I will find the guy before the show, and it's just going to be on loop while Belle and Sebastian is just playing. on the house music.
We're gonna commission an artist to do it in the style of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
I would do that. Speaking of things that shouldn't be deleted, fellas, you host podcasts. Plug those podcasts.
Yeah, so I am the co-host and producer of Trash Future, and I'm also the producer of Kill James Bond and executive producer / guy who fixes problems for No Gods, No Mayors, and I am in a band called Second Home, so our debut albums, Find a Way to Hate It, is coming out on Bandcamp on May 5th. You can pre-order it now and preview some of the tracks, and we'll put links in the show notes. Thank you.
Beneath Skin, show about the history of everything, told the history of tattooing and bloodwork, a show about the economy of violence, which Joe was on in April. And I also have a studio in London, so if you want any video shoot content, want to make a podcast, just need a studio to rent for the day, or you're international and want to launch a podcast, hit me up on Blue Sky, email, I don't know, get a naked soldier and march him through SE1 with a letter in his butt crack. I don't know.
That's how I deliver all of my mail to Tom. This is the only show that I host. Thank you so much for listening to it. I hope you enjoyed the series. If you like it, consider supporting us on Patreon. We're an independent podcast, and by supporting us on Patreon, you allow us to continue remaining that way. And, you know, we've been ad-free for almost a decade. So support us on Patreon, get tons of bonus stuff. And until next time, don't do anything you heard on the show other than drink strange goop off of the ground.
Yeah, it would be a bad idea.
Drink the forbidden puddles.
Drink the devil juice.